Hello, all you wonderful people out there in the ether. How are you guys doing? Do you feel wonderful today? Because you guys are absolutely amazing. I'm so glad you guys are here. So, today we have a treat. We are going to go through the Luigi Mangione indictment and the criminal complaint. We're going to have a lot of fun and we're going to talk about it, and we're going to talk about what the New York statute actually says and what they have to prove and what issues they're going to have during the indictment. So, before we go into that, please make sure to like this stream and leave a comment below. Tell me what you think. So, this is a sealed complaint that was filed in the Southern District of New York against Luigi Nicholas Mangione. And in here we have the county of offense is in New York, count 1. And I should say this was filed by Gary Cobb, who is an FBI agent. He's a special agent. Count 1 is stalking. Travel in interstate commerce from in or at least November 24th of 2024 to December 4th of 2024 in the Southern District of New York. Luigi, the defendant, traveled in interstate commerce with the intent to kill, injure, harass, intimidate, and place under surveillance with the intent to kill, injure, harass, and intimidate another person, and in the course and as a result of such travel, engage in conduct that places that person in a reasonable fear of death and of serious bodily injury to that person in the course of engaging in such conduct caused the death of that person. So here they're saying that he traveled from Georgia to New York for the purpose of stalking and killing Brian Thompson. And they talk about where this happened. One thing that is interesting is that Luigi was reported missing. The last contact that they had with him, that his mother had with him, was July 1st of 2024. So there is a period there between, when that happened and the date of the report. That was November 18th of 2024. In here, the mother stated that she spoke to him on July 1st, and that Luigi worked for TrueCar, and then he said the address where he used to work, which is now permanently closed, and the main number is disconnected, and they don't know where he was at. But there was a missing persons report for him. But the complaint itself just focuses on November 24th to December 4th for stalking and traveling in the interstate commerce for that purpose. Count 2, stalking, use of interstate facilities. From at least in or about November 24th to December 4th, Luigi, the defendant, with the intent to kill, injure, harass, intimidate, and place under surveillance with intent to kill, injure, harass, and intimidate another person, used an electronic communication device and electronic communication system of interstate commerce at a facility of interstate or foreign commerce to engage in a conduct that places that person in reasonable fear of death. So particularly here, he used a cell phone, interstate wires, interstate highways, and the internet to plan and carry out the stalking, shooting, and killing of Brian Thompson. Count 3 is murder through the use of a firearm. So it states in paragraph number 3 that on December 4th, Luigi, the defendant, during and in relation to crimes of violence for which he may be prosecuted in a court of the United States, namely the stalking offenses, counts 1 to 2 of this complaint, knowingly used and carried a firearm, and in furtherance of such crimes, possessed the firearm, and in the course of that crime caused the death of a person through the use of that firearm. It does say, he did shoot and kill Brian Thompson. Count 4 is a firearms offense, in which they state that the defendant, knowingly used and carried a firearm, and in furthering of such crimes, possessed a firearm which was brandished and discharged, and which was equipped with a firearm silencer and a firearm muffler. And then it goes to more detail about the murder of Brian Thompson. The basis for my knowledge and for the foregoing charges are in part as follows. So in here, the special agent is a special agent from the FBI assigned to FBI Violent Crimes Task Force, and he was personally involved in the investigation of this matter. This affidavit is being submitted for the purpose of establishing probable cause. And in here it says it does not include all the facts that I have learned during the course of my investigation. So it'll be interesting to see all the facts as they go ahead and then develop. Where the contents of documents and the actions, statements, and conversations of others are reported herein, they are reported in substance and in part. So it is a summary and it is just a part of it, except where otherwise indicated. So in here, they state on December 4th, approximately at 6:45 a.m., Brian Thompson, the victim, he's a chief executive officer of a nationwide health insurance company, was shot and killed by a masked assailant, the shooter, while walking on West 54th Street towards a hotel in Midtown Manhattan, the Midtown Hotel, where a Company One investor conference was scheduled to begin at 8 a.m. As discussed below, the shooter was later identified to be Luigi Nicholas Mangione, the defendant. Security camera showed that the shooter was wearing a gray backpack, come from two parked cars, walked behind the victim, and shot the victim in the leg and back outside of the Midtown Hotel's entrance on West 54th Street. The firearm the shooter used appeared to have a sound suppressing device or silencer attached to the front of the barrel. A still image is provided below. This is a still image. Law enforcement who responded to the scene recovered, among other items, 9mm shell casings and at least one live round of 9mm ammunition. The words deny, delay, and depose were written on the side of some of the shell casings. Responding law enforcement personnel also recovered a cell phone in the vicinity of the location where the shooting had occurred. So the investigations is how they found him. Based on my participation on the investigation, my conversations with other law enforcement officers, my examination of documents obtained through court-authorized search warrant, my review of documents prepared by others, and review of security camera video, I know that over the course of the next several days, investigators retrieved and reviewed hundreds of hours of recordings from nearby security cameras to track the shooter's movements, both and before after the murder. So on November 24th, approximately at 10:11 p.m., the shooter arrived in New York City on an intercity bus at the Port Authority bus terminal in Manhattan. So they know when he arrived in New York. The bus originated in Atlanta, Georgia. The shooter took a taxi to the area around the Midtown Hotel and stayed in the area for approximately 1 hour before taking another taxi to a hostel located in the Upper West Side of Manhattan. The shooter registered at the hostel under the name Mark Rosario and provided a false New York driver's license as a form of identification. So this is the false New Jersey ID. This is the picture that was provided. When the shooter was checking in at the hostel, the desk clerk asked the shooter to remove his mask, which he did, revealing his face to the security camera as shown below. Other than the interaction with the desk clerk, the shooter consistently kept his mask on throughout the entire time in New York, including while inside at the hostel. Wow, that I did not know that he just kept his face covered the entire time. Now we're back to December 4th. On December 4th, approximately at 5:35 a.m., the shooter left the hostel wearing the gray backpack and rode an electric bicycle down Central Park West to a location near the Midtown Hotel as shown below. So here he is walking. And there we go. This would be when he arrived nearby. At approximately at 5:41 a.m., the shooter walked around the area of the Midtown Hotel and at one point purchased items from a nearby coffee shop. The shooter then returned to a bench in the vicinity of the Midtown Hotel. On at least one occasion, Prior to the murder, the shooter was depicted using a cell phone. At approximately 6:45, after waiting near the Midtown Hotel for approximately an hour, the shooter saw and approached the victim. He shot the victim multiple times and then fled on foot to West 55th Street, where the shooter mounted the electric bicycle and rode towards Central Park. After disappearing inside the park for a period of time, the shooter was captured on video again, exiting the park West 77th Street and Central Park West, riding north on Central Park West. Where he emerged from the park, the shooter was no longer carrying the gray backpack as shown below. So this is when he left the park already without the backpack. At approximately 6:58 a.m., security footage captured the shooter riding the electrical bicycle near West 85th Street and Columbus Avenue. 2 minutes later, at approximately 7 a.m., the shooter was captured on video walking near 86th Street and Columbus Avenue without the electric bicycle. Approximately at 7:04 a.m., the shooter entered a taxi that drove him to George Washington Bridge bus terminal in the vicinity of West 179th Street and Fort Washington Avenue in Upper Manhattan. The shooter's face was captured by a camera in the taxi as shown below. At approximately 7:30 a.m., video footage from George Washington Bridge bus terminal captured the shooter entering the facility. No video footage showed the shooter leaving the bus terminal, suggesting that the shooter left New York City. On or about December 6, law enforcement officers searched Central Park found the gray backpack, matching the appearance of the gray backpack worn by the shooter as depicted below. And this is now the arrest and identification of the shooter. Based on my participation in this investigation, my conversations with law enforcement officers, my examination documents and items obtained through a court-authorized search warrant, my review of documents prepared by others, and my review of security camera video, I know, among other things. And then he lists them out. 8. On December 9th, 2024, so 5 days after, at approximately 9:14 a.m., a worker at a fast food restaurant in Pennsylvania called the police about a male customer later identified as Luigi Mangione, the defendant, who the worker believed resembled photos of the shooter that had been broadcast to the media following the victim's murder. Members of the Altoona Police Department responded and encountered Mangione, who they believed matched the appearance of the shooter. When approached by responding officers and asked for identification, Mangione offered the false New Jersey ID used by the shooter to check into the hostel. Mangione was later found to be in possession of a loaded 9mm pistol and silencer consistent with the weapon used to kill the victim, clothing that matched the apparel that the shooter wore in the security camera videos, a notebook, several $1,000s in cash, an envelope associated with the FDIC insured bank, and a letter addressed to the feds letter. So in case you guys don't know that letter, I did make a video going over the manifesto. That is the manifesto that you can look at the video. So it is available in my YouTube channel. The 9mm pistol and silencer were later tested and found to be operable by a ballistics examiner from the New York Police Department. Photographs of the firearm and silencer recovered are depicted below. The notebook contained several handwritten pages that express hostility towards the health insurance industry and wealthy executives in particular. For example, the notebook contained the following statements in entries that appear to correspond to particular dates. In an entry marked August 15th, the notebook described how the details are finally coming together, and I'm glad in a way that I've procrastinated because it allowed me to learn more about the acronym of the company one. The notebook entry also stated that the target is insurance because it checks every box. In an entry marked October 22nd, the notebook stated, 1.5 months. The investor conference is a true windfall, and most importantly, the message becomes self-evident. Later on in that entry, the notebook describes an intent to whack the CEO of one of the insurance companies at the investor conference. As described above, October 22nd was approximately 6 weeks before the date of the murder of the victim, which occurred on the date of Company One's investor conference. The Fed's letter recovered from Mangione stated, "I wasn't working with anyone. This was fairly trivial. Some elementary social engineering, basic CAD, and a lot of patience. Based on my own research, I believe CAD refers to computer-aided design." The Fed's letter also stated, "P.S. You can check serial numbers to verify this is all self-funded. My own ATM withdrawals." And this is true. He apparently comes from a lot of money. Based on all the above, my review of photographs of the shooter and my review of arrest photographs of Luigi Mangione, the defendant, I respectfully submit that Mangione is the shooter who shot and killed the victim on December 4th of 2024. Additionally, the notebook entries, the Fed's letter, the shooter's apparent surveillance of the Midtown Hotel on November 24th and December 4th, and the shooter's use of counter-surveillance techniques and escape from New York City all suggest the shooter took extensive efforts to identify the victim, place the victim under surveillance, and track the victim's whereabouts in the time period leading up to the murder. Below are surveillance stills of the shooter and an arrest photograph of Mangione. So this is the complaint that has the probable cause for the arrest of Mangione. So this is the press release from December 17th from the district attorney's office in New York. So in here it states Mangione is charged with 1 count of first degree and 2 counts of murder in the second degree. So the Manhattan District Attorney, New York Police Department Commissioner Jessica Tisch today announced the indictment of Luigi Mangione for the murder of 50-year-old United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson outside the Hilton Hotel in Midtown on December 4th of 2024. Mangione is charged in the New York State Supreme Court indictment with 1 count of murder in the first degree in furtherance of terrorism. That is how they got to first degree, because they attached in furtherance of terrorism. If that is not attached, they cannot get to first degree murder, so they would only get second degree. They also charge him with 2 counts of murder in the second degree. 1 is charged as a killing as an act of terrorism, 2 counts of criminal possession of a weapon in the second degree, 4 counts of criminal possession of a weapon in the third degree, and 1 count of criminal possession of a weapon in the fourth degree, and 1 count of criminal possession of a forged instrument in the second degree. So let's look at the indictment. So this is the indictment accusing him of murder in the first degree in violation of Penal Law 125.27, Section 1, subsection A. Right, then we'll go over this a little bit more in detail. The second count, murder in the second degree as a crime of terrorism. So in here they mention 2 statutes here as well. The third count would be murder in the second degree, the defendant in the county of New York on or about December 4th with the intent to cause death of another person. Fourth count, criminal possession of a weapon in the second degree. Possess a loaded firearm with intent to use the same unlawfully against another person. Fifth count, criminal possession of a weapon in the second degree. The defendant possessed a loaded firearm, said possession not being in the defendant's home or place of business. Sixth count, criminal possession of a weapon in the third degree. The defendant in the county of New York on or about December 4th possessed an assault weapon. Seventh count, criminal possession of a weapon in the third degree. The defendant possessed a firearm silencer. Eighth count, criminal possession of a weapon in the third degree. The defendant possessed a large capacity ammunition feeding device, with a Glock magazine. Ninth count, criminal possession of a weapon in the third degree. The defendant possessed a large capacity ammunition feeding device, again, to fit a Magpul magazine. 10th count, criminal possession of a weapon in the fourth degree. The defendant not being licensed as a gunsmith or dealer in firearms pursuant to penal law 400 here, and knowing that it was a ghost gun, possessed a ghost gun. 11th count, criminal possession of a forged instrument in the second degree. Defendant on or about November 24th, knowing the instrument to be forged with the intent to defraud, deceive, and injure another, uttered and possessed a forged instrument, the same being purporting to be and calculated to become and to represent, if completed, a written instrument officially issued and created by a public office, public servant, and government instrumentality. This is the New Jersey driver's license. So this is the indictment. All right, so what does this mean here? So murder in the first degree, you can only get there. So we're looking at 125.27, which you can access in New York public law. So newyork.public.law. You can access it there, or you can just Google it. And what they're really looking for is Section 1, subsection A. So either a person is guilty of murder in the first degree when, with intent to cause the death of another person, he causes death of such person or of a third person, and either, so we're looking at A, either the first one is the intended victim was a police officer, which we don't have here. So you can't be convicted of a first degree if it's not a police officer, right? Because there are criteria here that you have to meet in order to get to murder on the first degree, right? So one does not, I is not applicable here. II. The intended victim was a peace officer as defined in paragraph subsection 21, subsection 23, 24, 62 of sections 2.10 of the criminal procedure law. That's not the case here. So the intended victim was not a peace officer as defined by statute. So II is not applicable, right? It also talks about it's a physician, a paramedic, a firefighter, an EMT, an ambulance driver. All of those are not applicable here. So II is not applicable. Third one, III. So the intended victim was an employee of a state correctional institution or was an employee of a local correctional facility as defined by subdivision 2 of correction law, section 40 definition, which is not the case here. So that is also not applicable. Got number 4. At the time of commission of the killing, the defendant was confined in a state correctional institution or was otherwise in custody upon a sentence for the term of his natural life, or upon a sentence commuted to one of natural life, or upon a sentence for an indeterminate term, the minimum of which was at least 15 years, and maximum is natural life. Again, this is not applicable as well. So that would not be applicable. So we look to 5. The intended victim was a witness to a crime committed on a prior occasion, and the death was caused for the purpose of preventing the intended victim's testimony in a criminal action or proceeding. Again, not applicable here, right? So I'm going through this to really point out that in order to be convicted of a first-degree murder, they have to prove terrorism, okay? So I'm going through this for that reason, to show you in New York, you need to fit certain criteria before you can be convicted of first-degree murder. Otherwise, you just have second-degree, right? So this is why we're going through this exercise here. Okay, number 6, the defendant committed the killing or procured commission of the killing pursuant to an agreement with a person other than the intended victim. All right, well, that's also not applicable. That's not the case here as well. 7, So now we're at 7. The defendant was killed when the defendant was in the course of committing or attempting to commit an in furtherance of robbery, burglary in the first degree or second degree, kidnapping in the first degree, arson, rape, a crime formally defined by section 13050 of this title, sexual abuse in the first degree, aggravated sexual abuse, or in the course of and furthering of immediate flight after committing or attempting to commit any such crime. Okay, so all of this stuff here, that's not applicable. So we know for a fact these sections are not applicable. 7. As a part of a criminal transaction, the defendant with intent to cause a serious physical injury to or death of a person or persons causes death of another additional person. Okay, again, this is not a criminal transaction. Next one. Prior to committing the killing, the defendant had been convicted of murder. That's also not applicable in this case. 10. The defendant acted in a special, cruel, and wanton manner, pursuant to the course of conduct intended to inflict torture upon the victim prior to the victim's death. That is also not applicable in this situation. Next. The defendant intentionally caused the death of 2 or more persons within the state in separate criminal transactions. That's also not applicable here, right? Within a period of 24 months when committed in a similar fashion. Okay, that's also not applicable here. Okay. We are getting closer, you guys. We're getting closer. Next one. The intended victim was a judge, as defined in subdivision 23 of section 1.20 of the criminal procedure, and the defendant killed such victim because the victim was at the time of the killing a judge. Okay, this is also not applicable in this situation. And the last one. This is the last way that they could get potentially first-degree murder. Only way now, because we have gone through everything in the statute. We have gone through everything in the statute to show whether or not they can prove a first-degree murder. The last one, this is the only way they could potentially prove and get first-degree murder. The victim was killed in furtherance of an act of terrorism, as defined in paragraph B of subsection 490.05 of this chapter. So in order for that, the defendant needs to be at least 18 years old at the time of the commission of the crime. The only way that they can show and get to first-degree murder is if they can show this was done as an act of terrorism. The only way, under New York law, this is the only way they can get there. And I kind of mentioned that before in my video earlier today and in the prior video when I was reading the manifesto. This is the only way they can get there. So the question is, does this equate to an act of terrorism? Well, let's look. So now we are here looking at Penal Law Section 490.05, which defines what an act of terrorism is, right? So we're looking at Section 1, subsection A. You need to meet 3 criteria here, 3 criteria, and we'll jump right into it. So it needs to be or. So for this, the act or actions need to be intended to 1, intimidate or coerce a civilian population. 2, influence the policy of a unit of government by intimidation or coercion. Or 3, affect the conduct of a unit of government by murder, assassination, or kidnapping. So you need to meet one of those 3 based on the penal code. It needs to be intimidate or coerce a civilian population, influence the policy of a unit of government by intimidation or coercion, or affect the conduct of a unit of government by murder, assassination, or kidnapping. And that's going to be the big question, right? Is this conduct, was it intended to influence laws regarding insurance? What insurance companies are doing, right? But again, we're talking about influencing a unit of government or intimidate or coerce a civilian population. Definitely needs to do that, right? For purposes of, subparagraph 13, paragraph A, which we talked about of this chapter, means that activities that involve violent acts that are dangerous to human life, which again intimidate or coerce the civilian population, influence policy of a unit of government by intimidation or coercion, or 3, affect the conduct of a unit of government by murder, assassination, or kidnapping. That's going to be the really big question here. That's going to be the really big question. Again, was the intent here to intimidate or coerce the civilian population? Was the intent to influence the policy or the conduct of a unit of government? And that's how you get to an act of terrorism under New York law. So now the question is really what you think. Your temperature might be as good as it will be in the grand jury. What do you think now that you kind of know what the law is, now that you know what has happened, now you know some of the information? I mean, obviously we don't have all of the information right now. We have not seen the notebook. We only saw like brief excerpts of what the notebook said. So we don't have everything here with us right now. But we know enough to be able to kind of figure it out. Is this an act of terrorism? Should this be an act of terrorism, or are we just looking at second-degree murder here? And it'll be really crucial to see what happens next. Please let me know what you think in the comments below, and don't forget to hit that like button. Every little thing helps so much. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will talk to all of you guys later. Bye, everybody.